Hey, how's it going, everybody? I hope you have been living life on the edge. Now, these next few videos are going to be pretty exciting, at least for me, because I get to test drive a bunch of different cars. Well, not a ton, but there's 3 right now on my list that I'm looking at as either potential replacements for the 500 or to go in addition to the 500. Now, there's some empty room right here and right here. Honestly, realistically, financially, I can only really fill 1 spot. Maybe I could do 2, but ideally, I want to fill up 1 spot with 1 really, really special car. This car that I got to test drive today, honestly, was not even on my radar. It wasn't on my list. It was something that was recommended to me because they knew of another car that I was looking at. I apologize if the footage and the filming and all of that was not that good. I was trying to be very conscious of his time. Like I said, he was very kind enough to let me take his car. It is kind of a limited car, less than 400 miles on it, brand new, first edition type thing. It was a manual, and I was most happy about that because that is what I'm looking for right now. So let's get straight into the video. Hope you guys enjoy it. All right, so this is the first car of the series as far as deciding what we want to add to the fleet or replace the GT500 with. Super excited to introduce the first possible option to the channel, which is the brand new Lotus Emira. This thing is beautifully specced out. It is in a first edition generation color. I don't know a lot of the details, but it has been beautifully and properly specced with this almost chalk gray light color, obviously black, not a whole lot of carbon fiber options. This is the supercharged edition, and we got the supercharger sitting right behind you. You have these beautiful Aston Martin-like door handles with a beautiful white on black interior. I mean, this is honestly unexpected from Lotus. I think all of us can agree this is not what you would normally expect to see from a Lotus, and this interior is really hard to beat, especially compared to the other options that I'm looking at as well. My favorite part about this whole interior is the linkage system with the manual is visible. You're not going to see it a lot of the time, but the fact that it's visible, I think is just one of the coolest things about this whole interior. All right, so climbing into the front, it is pretty far down, but I think as far as ride height and positioning, it's fantastic. It's great. The footwell is a little interesting because it's kind of hard to see down there, but the footwell is shifted over to the right. It reminds me a little bit of the Audi R8 with how the footwell feels, which is something I didn't particularly like. I felt a little claustrophobic, plus I didn't have room to like rest my foot if I was on long trips or anything like that. So that's kind of one of the first things I'm not necessarily liking is the interior space in here. It is more confined. It's a little more claustrophobic, but it's a beautiful interior nonetheless. You have a little bit of storage space back here. You got a little shelf kind of back there for a few things. Then you have the engine and the supercharger directly back there. And then your steering wheel. The steering wheel is a little bit thick. I think I like the thickness of it. I love how it feels. I'm not sure this feels Alcantara-like, but it's also a slightly different material, I think. You obviously have a digital dash right there, which is really nice. And then you have another one right here, very responsive with a lot of different things going on. Right now it's set up in the track mode, so you can see your G's, power, torque, and of course your boost and everything else. Rear view visibility is not great. I know that's kind of hard to see. You have a very small part of the glass where you can see out of. Blind spots are also not great either. But like I said, you do have this beautiful, beautiful interior. Now, one thing that I did like about the other cars over this one was the amount of storage and practicality. This one I would say is more on the lower end of practicality. There still is a boot behind the engine because this is mid-engine, which I thought was pretty interesting. We'll give you a show here. I think this just opens like so. Full exposure to the supercharger and the engine itself, which I think is pretty cool, and the fact that you have the glass and can see the engine itself. And then you have this smaller boot right here, not big enough to fit a golf bag or anything, but hey, you could maybe fit 1, maybe 2 overnight bags in there. So pretty impressive, all things considered, that they still were able to put in some type of luggage space in here as well. The rear end of the Lotus, I think, is something That's pretty unique. It's very similar to their EV concept car. I can't remember what it's called, but you can see there's a lot of similarities and styles that they kind of took from it with this design. Obviously, you have air vents on the side for airflow, and then you have the exhaust tips and the light bar and the Lotus. It's a good looking rear end, I'd say. So definitely a butt I would smack. And then of course you have the Emira first edition badge right here to let everyone know just how special you are. So I think we'll hop in, take it around for a ride, maybe get an exhaust note or two. And this is not a boot anymore. They have since changed that. You have these ducts. I think they're kind of like heat exchangers to get the hot air out and away from the back of the car where the engine is. And I think a little bit of downforce as well, if I'm not mistaken. Rotors are pretty big. I don't know sizing or specifications. Sport Cup 2s, which are great tires. We're gonna go ahead and get a cold start on the Lotus Emira. I'll try and hold the mic as close to the exhaust as I can so you can get a true sound. Here we go. It may be some baby revs. Oh boy! Woo! Few pops and bangs. Honestly, for a Camry engine, that doesn't sound too bad. You've also got a little bit of audio from the supercharger. It's not the best sounding one out of the options I'm looking at, but still has a pretty decent exhaust note. All right, let's take it for a spin. Gonna go ahead and take our first spin in the Lotus Emira. Like I said, this stinky little startup right here is absolutely ridiculous and pointless. I can't tell if they're trying to mock Lamborghini or imitate them, one of the two. Linkage right here, it's really nice and notchy, a little bit harder than most, but you definitely know that you're in gear. Billet aluminum shifter, at least that's what it feels like to me. Very well crafted, great craftsmanship on that. Love the digital gauges, I think they're absolutely beautiful. I know some people like analog better. And like I was saying, the kind of release point on this is more towards the top, which throws me off a little bit. It's so hard to explain, but talking with the owner, I was like, oh, it feels light and heavy at the same time. And he agreed with me, and I really don't know any other way of how to explain it. So you get a little bit of induction noise with the supercharger. It's not a whine like you'd expect from a supercharger, like a Hellcat or anything else. It's definitely a different type of supercharger. And one thing that I've noticed already with this supercharger is in the first through third gears, you definitely notice that low end punch with torque from a supercharger. But after third gear, I can't tell where the supercharger really engages. We were watching the performance gauge here, and it almost seems like it would kick in after 4,000 RPMs. I'm not entirely sure where peak torque is on this car. I know it's 400 horsepower roughly with the supercharger. About 6,500 RPM red line. And it gets up and goes. Throwing these gears around, very notchy. You definitely know that you're in gear. I could see a possibility of maybe mis-shifting and going into a different gear. It's notchy, but as far as the gear being thrown, it's not long, it's very short. So we're just gonna kind of cruise around here. We are in sport mode now, which should open up the baffles a little bit more. Tightens up the steering for a Lotus. From everything that I've heard, this is exactly how I would have expected it to feel. You know exactly where the tires are, where they're pointed. And for being a mid-engine car and not having a lot in the front, you'd expect it kind of be hard to feel the weight of the front tires and kind of knowing where they are. I would definitely say I have a lot more confidence in knowing where the front tires are compared to my Shelby GT500. My 500 under 80 miles an hour, it's really hard to kind of feel confident knowing where your tires are going to be. But once you hit 80 with those front canards, it really compresses that front end and you have a lot more confidence. Just so light and nimble and agile, and definitely, like I said, everything that I've read as far as what you would expect from a Lotus, this is it right here. This is, I would say, a pretty fair contender to the other two cars that I'm looking at. I almost dislike that I'm enjoying this so much so far. So far, everything about this has impressed me. I think the only thing is compared to the other two that I've had. When you put your foot down, if you're not in a lower gear, it just doesn't give you that hit that you're kind of expecting from an NA. If we downshift a little bit, go through the gears, see when the supercharger spools up, you can kind of tell, but it's still, oh my gosh, so much grip. And I'm not even really, I'd probably say maybe 50-60% pushing it right now. Wow. So much confidence with this chassis, the tires. I'm not having to really put all the weight into the brake to get the front end to grab. It's all right there. It feels, handles great, but I'm not sure I'm loving the powertrain. It just seems to be a little lackluster towards the higher gears. Bottom gears, it feels fine. I think if you got out onto a track, you could really have a lot more fun, you know, maybe higher in the gears. Obviously, you probably wouldn't ever leave third gear. Second gear is fairly tall for this, about 64 miles an hour, roughly. Somewhere in the 60s, I think. But all in all, this has been a very, very fun car to drive. Well, you definitely know how I feel about the Lotus Emira, and like I said, I don't think it's the one to add to the collection right now, but definitely one that I'd like to add to the collection later down the road. I think in a way it is a very unique car. The styling is beautiful, the interior is beautiful. The powertrain is a little lackluster, and there's some things that I don't like, obviously, that you know about from my take on the car. But I think for a driver's enthusiast car, it's a great car and something that everybody should at least experience once. The Lotus handling is truly amazing. So let me know in the comments down below what you thought about the Lotus Emira. Do you think it is something that we should even add to the collection? Is it the one that we should add to the collection right now? Like I said, I don't think it is. I think the other ones are still a bit more unique, more fun, I guess you could say. But I'm curious to know your thoughts, so leave a comment down below. Let me know. Of course, make sure to like, subscribe, and share if you haven't already. Thank you all so much for tuning in and watching. Make sure to live life on the edge. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.